buzzword floating around on social media lately. So we're talking about exactly what is the Fujiwhara effect. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Meteorologist Erica Page will break it down for us right now.
It's actually a term that goes back into the earlier part of the 1900s. It was 1921 where a Japanese meteorologist, his last name was Fujiwhara, so that's how it was named. He basically showed that two storms could essentially rotate around a central point. So think of it as, and I heard this comparison earlier and I loved the way it was compared. Think about you're playing musical chairs and you've got two kids running around one chair left. That's essentially what's happening, but on a much bigger scale in our atmosphere. So it does depend on a couple of different things. Think the strength or the size of a storm and how close these two storms are working basically in proximity to one another. That's how this effect essentially gets triggered. So a lot of times when we talk about this effect specifically, we tend to refer to it in terms of tropical meteorology, though I'm sure if you have just an area of low pressure spinning through, say, the United States, and you've got a couple of different ones interacting with one another, you can also see this very similar effect. But we're going to keep this more so in the tropical sense, at least when we're talking about this specific example. So it must get within 850 miles of each other. These are for the much larger, more organized systems. Or if you have much more smaller or compact storms, you can drop that distance to about 350 miles. Again, these are some of the official criteria that you need for this effect to happen, and it can really impact how this storm may eventually kind of move along in our atmosphere. So it may take a completely different path than it was originally supposed to. Let's stick with this tropical example. You've got two different storms here that are eventually moving across, say, the Atlantic. Again, you've got that 850 miles or more distance between these two because these are two much larger systems that are interacting with one another. But if we were to just pick a specific point here right in the middle, you'll notice these two storms eventually rotate around one another. The northern storm gets a little bit bigger. That smaller southern storm tends to get a little bit more compact. Why is this? Well, it could be for a couple of different reasons. One, you've got a couple of different ways this can happen. You've got these two storms rotating around that common point, which is exactly what we showed in this example. But also if you look at point number 3, as they push away from each other, which is what this specific example shows, one storm may gather a lot more of the energy from this other storm, and so it may eventually weaken one and really strengthen one of the others. You can also have one other thing happen. Technically, these two storms could merge together and form a much bigger, more intense storm, potentially, if they were to really interact in that sense. But again, it's a couple of different options that you have, and that's just one example of how the Fujiwhara effect can happen.